Broncos country, a mile high salute to y'all, man. Week 2 of the Broncos OTAs is in the books, and we are going to talk about all the newsworthy notes, talk about what the local Denver media that was, finally available to be able to attend the final practice on Thursday, what they talked about, if it's relevant, not relevant, and we'll talk all things Broncos Week 2 OTAs. I appreciate y'all, man. Like, subscribe if you're not already, and let's get right into it. So first and foremost for me, I always like to hear what, some of the players and obviously what Coach Payton has to say after the practice. I think the presser gives a lot of really good information when it comes to maybe some tea leaves or some things that Sean Payton might be thinking. And one of the questions that really stood out to me, and you guys can make of it what you want, is that Mike Kliss specifically asked Coach Payton about the running backs and pass protection and how you feel like who's made strides and how are you divvying those up? Is it among Estime, he said, or is it among RJ Harvey or both? So he specifically mentions Estime and RJ Harvey. And it was an interesting response from Sean Payton. He says, this is something that we're trying to have all of them get better at. We're divvying up the reps among all of the backs, essentially. I'm obviously paraphrasing. But he brought up someone by name that wasn't answered. He said, Bidet is very, very good at that as well. And he's someone that could be a pass protector. Now, is this anything of importance? Maybe, maybe not. But the fact that he brought him up by name, shows that obviously he's happy with what Tyler Bidet is doing in regards to him as a pass protector. And if you look at his affinity for him last year, it's pretty interesting, man. Maybe Tyler Bidet is someone that we really feel like as Broncos fans, we might think there's no way he's going to be able to make the team with RJ Harvey and then maybe bringing J.K. Dobbins in. But hold your horses on that because Sean Payton obviously loves this kid. He activated him for the playoff game last year after him being out, almost 2 months, or I think over 2 months. So it's pretty relevant news. He obviously cannot escape this guy. He liked him. He wanted to give him an opportunity to be the starter, and unfortunately he got hurt in that first game. But keep an eye on Tyler Bidet, man. If he's someone that, continues to do well in pass pro and show a little bit of the spark that he showed last year, he might be Sean Payton's new Lil Jordan Humphrey. Obviously different position, but in a sense of he just can't seem to let him go. He loves what he's able to contribute to this team, and he's ultimately going to take touches away from others. So we will see, guys. Just something to, put in your back pocket. Remember it once we get into training camp. I thought that was super interesting there. No doubt about that. Additionally, per Zach By, this is what Zach By said on 104.3 The Fan yesterday. He's like, guys, I've been to 9 different training camps, and by far, in a way, this is the most efficient operation that he's ever seen. And I think that that's really newsworthy. I mean, we've always known that Sean Payton's all about the details. There's a lot of different little things that make Sean Payton such a great coach, aside from just his offensive mind and the way he calls plays. But it's really attention to the details and being as efficient and making the most out of every single rep as you possibly can. I thought that was really cool to hear. Not like we thought that it wasn't efficient, but he had just said there's no wasted time. Everyone's constantly doing something. You're making the most out of it. And I think that ties into the players not getting injured too, right? You're amping them up the right way. You're allowing for them to get as many reps as they possibly can that are specific to the sport in which they're playing. And I think that is very much huge. Again, another note is John Franklin Myers was not at camp. Some people had expected for him to show up this week, but it's still not mandatory. Didn't seem like it was a big deal per all the reports, and the people that were there. So John Franklin Myers, not at camp again. He's working out on his own. Again, Mike Kliss and all these guys are saying it has nothing to do with his contract. He had prior plans that he had put in place. But he is expected to be back next week for mandatory, because obviously at that point they can start finding him. So it's something to keep tabs on. I personally think that we should certainly open up contract negotiations for John Franklin Myers, even if you have to do it first before Zach Allen. Get something done. Make sure that he's happy for this year, and we have the option of keeping him at least for one more year after. I think he's a really great player. I think he's a very good complement. You want to keep this defensive line group intact, personally. And you can always, worst case scenario, you could always franchise tag Zach Allen next year to continue negotiations if you wanted to play hardball. I think you should try to get both of them done. But it's easier to get John Franklin Myers done because you're not gonna franchise tag him. It's gonna be way too expensive for a player like him. So I'd like to see both those players' deals get done. But usually these things happen in the 5 to 6 week gap between OTAs and training camp, which will happen here shortly. So we'll get to that. Another newsworthy note, man, is Vele appears to have put on some muscle mass. He looks like he's bigger, stronger, and he's just as fast or even faster than he was last year. And he really did continue a strong performance based off what everybody was saying again. So it's nice to be able to see someone stack days. Obviously, we don't know what he did Tuesday and Wednesday. He could have looked great those days as well, or he could have maybe struggled some of those days. But from the 2 days that were open to the media, people kept consistently talking about Vele. And it's always better to hear that versus not, right? So that's a big thing. Another positive that Sean Payton had said about Troy Franklin, who was asked, is he's made a number of explosive plays. That's what a lot of people were saying they saw at camp too. Someone that is stretching the field, making the explosive plays down the field, stretching out the secondary, and that's really what he's gonna do. I feel like that's his ideal role, is to just be the deep ball guy, the guy that can open things up down below for other players. And if you catch him in the right defense, it's going to be a touchdown, no doubt about it. So we will see. But good to hear, strides being made from somebody like Troy Franklin as well. The more wide receivers that we can get that are going to make a leap in year 2, the better. But people consistently, man, they just couldn't stop talking about Devaughn Vele. So that's really, really good news. We'll see if that continues next week as well. We should have a lot more tape and a lot more reports too, since there'll be 3 days open to the media. Another guy that, consistently people were saying looked really good was Q Robinson, right? You talk about Andrew Mason said it. Zach Byer was talking about it. Mike Kliss talked about it. Cody Rourke, a lot of these other local, the big and the big and the medium size, like all the local medias are consistently saying specific messages. They were all talking about Q Robinson. And he's going to be a really fun player, man, because he's going to contribute and be very, very good at special teams. And so if he can keep showing these flashes as a pass rusher, it's just adding more and more talent to an already very deep room. A team that has led the league in sacks last year, the more the merrier. So great news there for Broncos country. Another player that had shined as well that people were talking about was Savion Jones. And it was interesting. DJ Jones was he was interviewed after practice. He did a presser. And he talked about Savion. He said, this is going to be a really good player in this league. He's got the length. He's got the strength. He's got the talent to be able to play. He's got a phenomenal work ethic. He did say that he's still got some work to do, but he's got all the right tools to be able to be a very dominant player. So you love to hear that, man. So 2 of your young rookies already making waves amongst the veterans and making plays in front of the local media. So you gotta love that. Evan Engram was also part of the presser after practice as well. Really good to hear from him, man. Super sharp guy, someone that's really fun to be around. You can tell that players are just going to love him. He spoke glowingly about Bo Nix. He talked wonders about this team as a whole and how grateful he is to be here, and how Bo Nix was a really big reason why he ended up ultimately, choosing Denver, which is great. Now, I will say, and I don't know, I haven't watched enough Evan Engram. I always known that he wasn't a very big tight end. Like, he was basically a big wide receiver, but he looks pretty small. And so it could just be a multitude of things. It could be how he's always looked. I do know that when we signed him, he was just recovering from shoulder surgery. So maybe he just still hasn't put on all of his weight back on. Just something curious that I observed. But regardless, he's been a full go so far in OTAs. And by all accounts, he's looked great. And I cannot wait to see him play, man. I think he's going to be such a stud. I really do. And he's gonna take this offense to another level. But we got to get more behind him. We really, really do. Obviously, we talked about J.K. Dobbins. We know that he was in the building yesterday. On Wednesday night, he had dinner with some of the coach and some of the front office guys. Nothing is imminent. Per all the reports, it's still a possibility. The offer's still on the table. It could be an Evan Engram situation where maybe he visits with other teams and sees where he feels like he wants to fit. It's a big advantage for Denver in that case because first of all, I think we're projected to be a very solid team overall. But our running back room still has a lot of questions. I think someone like J.K. Dobbins would really feel confident that he can get quite a bit of playing time given the guys that are in this team. So gives us a big advantage there, similar to what it was with Evan Engram. But we'll see. I don't want, I like the fact that they're not showing any kind of desperation. They're just saying, hey, listen, if you want to come play for us, cool. If not, all the best to you. Nothing wrong with either one of that. So we'll see. I definitely would like to see J.K. Dobbins signed with Denver, but I'm also not panicking if he does, if he doesn't. So not a big deal there. And some punter news. Shout out to Andrew Mason, who's all about his punters. He had said that Crawshaw looks much stronger. He had a much better performance, much more consistent. So David, my guy, you can exhale. Our franchise punter looks like he had a nice rebound week. So all good news there as it relates to our Australian punter, Jeremy Crawshaw. But again, man, RJ Harvey, that was the talk of the town. He had a great long touchdown pass from Bo Nix, catching the football. Again, he looked explosive. I guess, he's been showing some pretty decent progress as a pass protector. So I have no doubt at this point, even though it's still very early, he's going to be the featured back, if he's healthy. It's really going to be about, is it going to be Estime? Are they going to bring in somebody like J.K. Dobbins? Is it going to be Tyler Bidet? Is it going to be Jaleel that's behind him? But RJ Harvey, man, he seems like he's going to be the guy. And watch out for Tyler Bidet, man. I think what Sean Payton said about him is noteworthy. No doubt about it. I really do. So he might be the dark horse running back that splits time with RJ Harvey. Sean Payton also discussed how, the defensive line sets the tone for the team is what he had said. It's always going to be a priority for him as a head coach because, he had said you want to be strong on offensive line and defensive line for obvious reasons. But if you're not really good on the O-line, you don't really know if you have a good defensive line because you're not having the right measuring stick, which is obviously pretty obvious, but you don't really think about that too often. The fact that we got a really good O-line, really good D-line. D-line was just, giving them fits. Not only do they look more dominant than ever, there's so many guys that can beat you, even in the second, third, fourth teamers. So I think it's amazing to hear that, but it's also noteworthy because, you got two defensive linemen in JFM and in Zach Allen that are looking for new contracts. And so for him to say that, like in a report prior and then be asked about it, and he was talking glowingly about those guys as well and how they set the precedent for the room. Yeah, I think I would expect for both John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen to get some sort of deals done. At least I really, really hope so. I think that should be the main priority. And then we can look at other guys like Sutton, Benito, those kinds of things. He also talked a lot about Jahdae Barron, man. He said, somebody asked him, do you view safety as a potential role? He brought up Malcolm Jenkins in his time with the Saints. He said, no, it's a different vision, different player. The vision for Barron is that he's going to play inside corner and outside corner. He's going to be both. He's going to be utilized, man, as a Swiss Army knife. I cannot wait to watch him play. And again, like we talked about, J.K. Dobbins, he's still an option, but no timeline. Nothing is imminent. So we will see. Could be, like I said, one of those things where he takes the day today and tomorrow to either mull his options, visit other teams, and he can sign and show up for mandatory minicamp next week, or he can ultimately just sign prior to that, get use that the 5-week break till minicamp to come in here, settle in, get his body right, get acclimated, and then show up for training camp. You never know. We could also sign him later on in camp. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen. So I'm not gonna look into it all too much. There's no timeline or there's no specific deadline that's gonna rush any of that. So overall, guys, we should be fired up, man. We should be fired up. Every day we get closer to the start of the season, there's just awesome reports with many of our young guys, both our draft picks from this year and the draft picks that we had last year going into year 2. Bo Nix, again, crushing it. He was picked off by Hufanga at the end of practice. So I look at it like great play by Hufanga. I also, listen, we might hear a lot of reports this coming camp because Bo Nix is so much more comfortable and he's not in any kind of a quarterback battle where he's going to be a little more conservative and doesn't want to make the bad play. He's going to let it rip in camp and he might throw quite a bit of picks in camp. And I'm fine with that, man. the great quarterbacks do that all the time, whether it's because they're trying to be aggressive or they're just trying to see what works. They're doing some experimentation. Patrick Mahomes is notorious for throwing a lot of interceptions in training camp. Peyton Manning would throw picks all the time when he was here. It's a pretty normal thing, but it's nice to see, the new defensive prize possession, player that we got making plays, and Bo out there trying to be aggressive too. So you got to love it. Anyways, y'all, let me know what your thoughts are below in the comments. Take it easy, and until the next video, peace.